Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, I am absolutely thrilled to share this material with you today because it completely flips the script on how we view intelligence. Whenever we picture a true genius, society usually paints this image of a perfectly put together individual, right? We imagine someone who just effortlessly excels in every academic setting, their desk is perfectly immaculate, and they always have the absolute perfect answer right at the ready. But what if I told you that this picture is almost entirely wrong? Actually, psychology tells us that some of the strangest, messiest, and honestly most unconventional habits people have are actually hidden signs of extremely high intelligence.
So I want you to just be totally honest with yourself for a second. Do you ever feel like your brain operates on a completely different frequency than the people around you? Do you catch yourself doing things that others are constantly questioning? Or maybe you've just always felt a little, misunderstood by conventional social norms. Well, you are definitely not alone, and much more importantly, there is absolutely nothing broken about you. Think about the myth of this stereotypical genius, perfectly put together, excelling at everything. Now compare that to the real genius, messy, eccentric, constantly overthinking, and frankly, occasionally chaotic. From the outside looking in, the behaviors of a true high IQ individual can look odd, maybe a little antisocial, or even a bit unhinged. But inside that highly intelligent mind, these eccentricities are serving a very specific, incredibly efficient purpose. What looks like a total mess to the rest of the world is actually just your brain processing reality on a level that most people simply never notice. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the internal processor, and how we handle cognitive complexity. Here's our first socially awkward quirk: talking to yourself. Come on, you know you do it. Have you ever caught yourself muttering quietly while you're deep into a project? Or maybe pacing around your living room, having a full-blown debate with your own thoughts? Or even just whispering a highly structured plan to yourself while walking down the grocery aisle? Society loves to joke that talking to yourself is, the first sign you're losing your mind. But the truth? It's the exact opposite. Psychology actually has a name for this. It's called verbal reasoning, and the science behind it is fascinating. When you have a brain that's constantly firing off a million ideas at once, vocalizing actually forces your brain to slow down just enough to process information logically. It is a highly practical act. Turning your internal thoughts into spoken words helps you organize a chaotic mental web, filter out all that useless background noise, and literally solve problems at a faster rate. So no, you aren't losing your mind, you're just staying hyper-focused to make smarter decisions. Let's transition to a habit that can often feel like a really heavy burden: overthinking everything. Now look, it's absolutely crucial to distinguish this from regular anxiety. People with high intelligence tend to overthink with profound logic. Coworkers and friends might easily mistake this for hesitation, right? Or indecisiveness. They might look at you and wonder why it takes you so long to just make a simple choice. But the reality is, you are naturally wired for cognitive complexity. You aren't frozen by fear, you are deep in a heavy data gathering phase. Your brain is instantly running countless simulations of the future. You're examining every single angle, you're weighing the possibilities and the consequences, and you're processing minute details that everyone else completely overlooks. Your brain simply refuses to settle for the first obvious answer before making a move because it fundamentally knows the best outcome requires thorough analysis. Which brings us to section 2, the environment designer: space and efficiency. Habit number 3 is a strong preference for taking long, solitary walks. When you have a lot on your mind, you probably find yourself choosing solitude over socializing. You just want to step away from the noise of the world, put the phone away, and walk. People might think you're avoiding them or just acting antisocial, but what's really happening is you're entering a deeper state of thinking that absolutely requires physical and mental space. And there's a deep neurological reason behind this. Steady physical movement literally activates the brain's creative and problem-solving networks. Walking acts as a tool to clear your head, offering a blank canvas that allows your mind to connect completely unrelated ideas. There is a general consensus among history's greatest thinkers: the best ideas rarely come while sitting at a desk. They arrive when the body is in motion and the mind is entirely free. Okay, now we arrive at habit 4, and it's a wonderfully perplexing inconsistency: being incredibly messy in one area of your life while being flawlessly organized in another. People just assume a smart person must have a perfectly clean room, a spotless desk, and, a color-coded calendar. But if you have a high IQ, you might have a physically chaotic desk while simultaneously maintaining a completely spotless digital filing system or a flawlessly structured creative project. This is a concept known as selective organization, and it completely reframes this idea of perceived laziness.
High IQ minds rarely organize everything equally. Instead, you're subconsciously assigning value to where you spend your mental energy. You know perfectly well that keeping a desk perfectly tidy doesn't actually help you solve a complex problem, so you entirely disregard the physical clutter. Ignoring that clutter is actually a masterclass in energy conservation and mental efficiency. You are putting your energy strictly into what matters. Let's shift gears to Section 3, the depth seeker, finding intellectual fuel.
Habit 5 is honestly one of my personal favorites, the 2 a.m. obsessive research burst. You totally know the feeling. You're suddenly wide awake, aggressively researching the history of obscure clockmaking or some niche historical event. Or maybe you're just learning the basics of a brand new coding language out of nowhere. You become entirely consumed, dedicating hours to absorbing every single detail, only to suddenly drop the entire thing the very next day.
I love the concept of the curiosity loop because it maps out the exact biological reason behind this behavior. You aren't lacking commitment, you are simply feeding a hungry mind. First, intense curiosity strikes. Second, you dive straight into deep obsession and research. Third, the act of acquiring this new knowledge triggers a massive dopamine reward in your highly active curiosity system. And finally, once the puzzle is solved and the pattern is understood, you just naturally drop it and move on to seek out the next intellectual thrill. Which brings us to our final quirk, Habit 6, a deep, almost physical disdain for small talk. Casual chats about weekend plans, the weather, or office gossip, they don't just bore you, they feel physically draining and incredibly tedious. In large group settings or at parties, this can easily make you come across as quiet, shy, or maybe even a bit aloof. It's such a fascinating dichotomy. Surface-level talk offers absolutely zero mental stimulation, so it leaves you quiet and drained. But the exact moment the conversation shifts to complex topics, say a deep philosophical question, a complex theory, or a shared passion, you suddenly come alive. You become intensely engaged and extremely talkative. You don't hate socializing at all. Your brain simply requires depth, meaning, and novelty. You only truly engage when conversations have actual substance. Finally, Section 4, your advantage, the high IQ edge. I want you to think of your mind like a high-performance engine. Psychology clearly shows that if you talk to yourself in the grocery store, if you actively avoid small talk, wander alone, or obsess over random topics at midnight, you are absolutely not broken. These eccentricities are literal proof of a powerful, high-performance mental engine. Your brain just operates in a deeper, more complex way. And because of that, it naturally requires different fuel, different maintenance, and a totally different environment to run at its absolute best. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. What if your weirdest habit is actually your greatest superpower? Embracing these weird quirks doesn't just explain why you feel different, it proves that your unique way of navigating the world is exactly what gives you an edge. So the next time you catch yourself overthinking or muttering your thoughts aloud, please don't apologize for it. Embrace it as your ultimate intellectual advantage. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep feeding that curious mind.